when you look at India battling Pakistan, that nuclear umbrella that Pakistan had, that they can continue terror despite having nukes, has that nuclear bluff been called out? Or in the times to come, Pakistan may be even more desperate and try the nuclear blackmail, the nuclear bogeys, some way or the other?
I think it's actually been called out, and I'll be focusing on, I think this is the major point, and again, international media not paying attention to this, that was a giant leap in strategic leadership to say, look, just because you have a nuclear weapon, you're not going to get away with anything. And I think it did put Pakistan on notice that all your past activity, even based on historical precedents, no longer will that be allowed just because you have a nuclear weapon. And it's reckless for you to think that. I think hopefully this changes even in deterrence theory, that it is possible to respond to this without getting to that area where somebody thinks that it's okay to just start talking about nuclear weapons. That's for survival. And nobody's threatening Pakistan's survival. India is saying no longer will Pakistan terrorism oriented at India be tolerated. Nobody's talking about to that point where you'd get to there. I think India has shown a lot of leadership in dealing with this nuclear blackmail that other countries have tried as well.
According to you, Colonel Spencer, what are key takeaways from Operation Sindoor? The biggest takeaways?
I think the biggest takeaway is that India's investments in its defense systems showed to be worth the money that they spent. The other takeaway is that India has demonstrated many aspects of warfare that others could learn from. The transparency in the operations, the civil, as in the political leadership statements immediately, the actual restrained but very deliberate use of force that isn't escalatory, but and not jumping up the escalation ladder. There's the biggest one, of course, but I think is just the sheer, because I deal in war, and people have lots of ideas on war. The objective analysis of this is India showed its superior military capabilities and strategic independence.
Information warfare is an integral part of war, especially going ahead. Is that an area where India needs to do a lot more? Because Pakistan's misinformation and disinformation campaign, and your appreciation why a section of the Western media, academics and analysts are unable to accept the truth?
It is a big part of modern wars. I think more than some people recognize, and this is why I'll be using India's case study as what it takes as a nation to respond and put out information. You can't respond to information. You have to put out the truth. And that has been the biggest thing that has helped the world see through Pakistan's lies. I mean, when you have the New York Times calling out Pakistan's lies, that's pretty impactful because they don't usually do that, in my personal opinion. But do I think that India could have done better in the information operations space? That's a great question. You can always do better, but I think this is a demonstration of what right looks like. Just the immediate communication, all the ministers on the same sheet of music, the military giving exact details, the following of the laws of war, all of that was an immense demonstration. But this is a small test. We'll see what the path going forward, because now there's even more misinformation is coming out about what will happen and what is the future of this. But it's been interesting, and I think India's approach even to the Western media, like, why are you keep saying certain things, whether that's Trump statements or Pakistan statements, and thinking there's a balance. I saw somebody talking about both sides. Look, we need moral clarity. Like, there's only one country sending terrorists into another to do terrorist attacks, and it's not India.
Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And especially as somebody who's covered counter-terror operations for over 2.5 decades, it's absolutely bizarre the manner in which, some in the West are unable to accept the truth. Even when you speak of Western publications, if they're accepting the truth, but it's almost as if half-heartedly, because there's so much information in public domain. There's so much transparency in the battlefield, because Balakot 2019, they didn't, despite, facts being put out in public domain, future of warfare, future of Operation Sindoor. You think, with your experience looking at urban warfare in Afghanistan and Iraq, and especially Afghanistan, because Pakistan had a major role there, will Pakistan once again hit back? I covered the Kargil War of 1999, and even when Pakistan was retreating, defeated after a ceasefire, it kind of struck back. It was beaten back, but it did. And the impression is that even when they're retreating, there is a counter attack that they do. SOP, that standard operating procedure with them. You think it'll happen once again here, either through terrorists or through their armed forces?
Yeah, one, I don't think they're going to give up on their state backed of terrorism, even though this is a strong new doctrine that's been established, but they're willing to sacrifice terrorists. It is a great question. I try not to get into forecasting because I understand how uncertain it is. I personally believe that I don't think they will. I think this was a very methodical action, counter reaction. And now we've seen the immediate lies trying to save face within themselves. I see signs of that they're not going to, but this is why war is more than just military, right? So even India's diplomatic position that like the Indus Water Project is like until you change your behavior, then there's no reason to have this relationship. Then they want to have a relationship. I personally don't think there, but we put rational actors, and sometimes you have extremists who defy rational actor. Like there's a consequence if you do a counterattack, and you think, and that's what we call deterrence theory. I have a gut feeling that they won't, but even a broken clock can be right twice a day, and I don't want to do that kind of forecasting.
Okay, but you think that costs have been imposed on Pakistan, and deterrence? India was able to send across that message when 13 air bases and their radars were targeted from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir down to Sindh and as deep as Sargodha.
Absolutely, a cost and a message, right? So there's a dual objective here. You want to impose the cost for an action, but also send a message of, look, I'm demonstrating a capability in case you miscalculate and want to counter attack. So I think it was both absolutely the cost for both the terror attack and the military attack, and both times a message saying, look, we can de-escalate at this point, but I'm sending you a message. I can hit you anywhere at any point.
And they understand that message in your appreciation, whatever's followed, and you've been able to study that since the 10th of May?
I absolutely think so. And they also understand that their lies aren't working based on satellite imagery and intelligence reports and things like that.
Colonel Spencer, for joining me here on India Today. As always, many thanks. You've been able to set the record straight as far as Western appreciation of India's Operation Sindoor is concerned. And because you're a soldier, because you're an academic who's studying urban warfare, you think this is an operation that, before I let you go, this is an operation that would be studied as response to Islamist terror, global Islamist terror?
Absolutely. And we'll look back at this being a turning point. I think this is a turning point to at least one nation's backing of terrorism that could be replicated with other nations. I will be studying it more in detail and make sure I articulate the lessons that should be learned from it. And I think other people are currently in my circles within national security and professional military education. But I think we'll look back at that it was a turning point, especially for India, but also for the approach that nobody globally should be accepting for terrorism in general.